All right, well, welcome everybody. This is the Southwest chapter of IAE, and some of you are members of IAE in a different chapter, and some of you all are probably not IAE members. I think there's a handful of you that are not IAE members, but welcome, because this is a program that we are doing for everyone. So all are welcome. I am the chair of the Southwest chapter. My name is Erica Welling. And I see some familiar faces and some that are brand new to me. It's very exciting. This has been a program that has been done in other IEE communities and in different formats, and it's always been hugely popular. It's all about generative AI and the tools that we can use in the event business. And also in other ways, and this is going so rapidly. So we're each time that this program has been presented, it's something new comes out of it. I hear, and I'm going to jump right in and introduce our two panelists today. I'll start with Andy. Andy Lomaski is the Senior Director of PMMI, which is the Association for Packaging and Processing Technologies. Andy has over 15 years of experience in informative technology and management consulting. In his role as Senior Director of IT at PMMI, Andy has been an innovator, a problem solver, an enterprise change leader, and he works to carry many different aspects of PMMI's business forward through a digital metamorphosis, easy for me to say. He is responsible for the company's overreaching technology strategy, which includes enterprise applications, IT operations, infrastructure, cybersecurity, data privacy, spanning across 3 offices and in 2 countries. So, I mean, he's done things as in transformational technology projects for PMMI that include rolling out, for instance, the CRM platform, and shifting the company to the cloud, and then working with all aspects of the business to focus on enhancing security, which is so important in data privacy laws, and switching to all digital platforms beyond email and ensuring all the scalability for their audience and advertising platforms. He's got really deep experience in technology capabilities, obviously, strategic business objectives, and managing complex multi-million-dollar IT programs and projects, and is the Chief Information Officer by contract for another trade, has previously been the Chief Information Officer by contract for another trade association, and has worked with industries, with multiple industries across several different industries, I should say, with digital strategies and solving their business problems. He comes to us through the tech community. As I said, this is a big conversation with the tech community. So welcome, Andy. And we thank you for putting this together. Our tech community has deep passion with this. And with that said, I'm going to introduce our chair of the IAE tech community, and that is Cubicle Kerr. Cubicle is our other panelist. He is the Vice President of Information Technology for AVIXA, which is the Audiovisual and Integrated Experience Association. You may have heard of it with their trade show called Infocom. Cubicle is, AVIXA is also the leading trade association for the audiovisual industry. And in Cubicle's role, he's responsible for leading the association's IT strategy, operations, security, and digital ecosystem. He has over 19 years of experience in the IT industry, and he has held several senior level positions in a variety of organizations, including Cisco, Tandberg, and National Apartment Association. His accomplishments include leading the association's migration to cloud, the CRM and the new CMS, LMS, and data lake, developed and implemented a new cybersecurity program that significantly improved the organization's security posture, launched a new website that has increased member engagement by 40%, and e-commerce journeys, increasing the total memberships by 60%. And he's a certified project management professional, as well as a CEM, which we know is certified exhibition management. His passions are all about IT advisement and to even non-technical leadership, making a positive impact, using technology and digital interactions for trade show customers, learning new things, staying up to date on the latest trends and technologies, and it has a bunch of personal interests too that are lots of fun. traveling and basketball and exploring, and again, go figure, on personal interest, exploring and learning about new technologies. So with that said, I am going to leave this open for the rest of this program. So I'm so anxious and excited to hear what you all have to tell us about generative AI. And for those of you that have questions, please put them in the chat. Again, welcome. Thank you to our two panelists and also our host, Southwest Chapter IAEE.
Thanks, Erica. That's great intro for both me and Andy. I'll speak for Andy now. But yeah, thank you for the invite. Thanks for this session. If anything, Andy and I love is talking technology. So you're going to hear a lot from us. But yeah, feel free to put a question in the chat anytime, and feel free to like unmute and ask a question if you feel so too. Andy and I would love feedback. With that said, let's quickly jump into the presentation. Thank you for, first of all, answering these questions. These are really helpful context for both Andy and myself in figuring out who's in the group, who's listening to us. And I love the first question, right? How familiar you are. And there's almost like a 50-50 split between frequent users, played with it a little, heard about it, and, not familiar with. So it's a great group of audience for the session today, because I don't claim to be an expert in this area. I just claim to be a user. And, Andy and I learn every day as well, right? So if you have something which you are using, ChatGPT for, or a very specific generative AI tool, please put that in the chat, because I'm sure, I'm sure I'll learn a few things from this session as well. It's good to see the representation of the different industry segments, as well as the chapters. I saw some good chat messages already that we're from different areas of the country. So thanks for joining. I'll call out the member IAE in the end, so we'll put some context into what the benefits are for those of you who are not members or not really engaged or very engaged with IAE. I love to start off with this quote from Alex Ohanian, who is the Reddit co-founder, famously known as Serena Williams' husband. Obviously a very smart guy. And then there are a bunch of quotes, right? This is not new. This spoke to me more than anything else, because it speaks about, this is bigger than the smartphone, bigger than broadband equity, bigger than social media. I love to relate this to our industry, the events industry. Imagine what the smartphone did for us, right? Imagine what social media has done for us, and broadband did for us at our trade shows or at our events. So just mindful of that, kind of thing, like where we are investing in apps, we are investing in social media, we have, specific jobs for handling our social media handles. So, just keeping that in context, how big AI can be in our world, in our industry. I also like to set some context, right? We do ChatGPT kind of reminds a lot of people of chatbots and, what we've done with chatbots or what we do with chatbots. This is slightly different. So I think this is a good start to this presentation. You've either dabbled with chatbots, interacted with them or built them for your organization or for your events. But chatbots are typically rules-based, right? They're programmed to answer a very specific set of questions, guide people down pathways, very helpful for customer service, answering frequently asked questions, just general first line of support for our users, for our attendees, for our members. What ChatGPT is a slightly different thing, right? It's not a chatbot. It's a large language model. I want you to remember that term, large language model, right? Because it'll keep coming up in this presentation over and over again. And what that means is it's trained on a massive data set, right? It's trained on this massive data set of everything we know on the web up to a certain date. And then it generates more human-like responses, right? So, and we'll see some examples of that, how you can give it more context, how you can make it respond differently, which is slightly different, again, from a chatbot perspective. Important thing to remember is this is very new technology, right? So it's still under development. There are some downsides we'll go through as well. But it is a much more expansive system for writing complex things material, copyright issues as well in there, we'll get into. But essentially, it's slightly different from a chatbot, right? So that's the takeaway here. This is a much more visual representation of what I'm trying to say here. Again, chatbot very rule-based, ChatGPT large language model. Training is, chatbots are very limited set of data. So it only can answer that limited set which you've trained it on. While ChatGPT is a massive data set, right? So it can be trained on a massive data set, or we can try and control it to a very specific set of answers we're looking for. Chatbots are great. Don't give up on chatbots. They're great for simple tasks, for customer service, answering frequently asked questions, just a very good first line of support, not having people read through our FAQs. Chatbots do great for that. But ChatGPT is great for more complex tasks, right? Writing creative content, providing technical resources. It can write code if you want it to write code. And some IT people are using for that. Chatbot is a very mature model, right? There are hundreds and hundreds of products out there. ChatGPT is still under development, but we'll see this generative AI is moving pretty fast.
And Kapil, I'd like to add just one more thing before we touch on this slide here, is that I think there's a big differentiator between like ChatGPT from OpenAI as a large language model versus a lot of these other tools that you'll see these names of, like Midjourney and Copy.ai. The tools are just that. They're tools that use the large language model to do what they do. And so in some cases, like if you put a prompt or a question into ChatGPT, it's going to, spit out an answer in text, right? But ChatGPT by itself is just one of a few different large language models. And that's where, like Google with Bard is coming in with their own language model. Think of the model as more of like the platform. And there are AI tools that use either one platform like ChatGPT to power what it does, or there are tools that could use multiple platforms and blend the responses together from 3 or 4 different models to get you a response. And so that's how some of these tools differentiate themselves, which is the perfect segue into our next slide.
Thanks, Andy. Yeah, ChatGPT is just one of the large language models. As Andy just said, there are multiple large language models, and you should really decide on which one is beneficial to you for doing the task you're trying to do. Perfect segue into this slide, it's just a great representation of generative AI. So two keywords I want you to remember if you're not somebody in technology is large language model and generative AI. Again, great things to know, learn, and then ask questions from your vendors on these as well. What this graphic is telling us is, as Andy just said, it's not just one or two things, it's a host of things, right? And in some cases, it's very targeted to the task at hand. So there are video products which generate video, AI products which just generate video. Andy will show an image product which can be used for image generation. There's obviously code generation, speech generation, but the most talked about right now is ChatGPT, which falls under the text generation kind of concept. Andy and I were talking about this. This graphic is probably 2 or 3 months old at this point, and it's constantly changing. I looked up and I found like 10 different versions of this. Another thing to remember is there are also vertical models, right? So if you're representing lawyers, for example, there's a product for lawyers for AI. So if you're in a very specific industry, look for those as well, because those are really useful in keeping you within that vertical, for example. I like to split this into what is the application of generative AI for us? So, there is an internal application, there's an external application, right? So external application is pretty straightforward. What are we providing our members and attendees, which is user-facing, deals with attendee experience. How does this impact our shows going forward? What are people expecting who are coming to our events from a generative AI perspective? But there's obviously a huge benefit in using these internally for our staff, for our organizations. And we look for a couple of those examples as well, and what you should be looking out for. In terms of internal, I always feel like those are great enhancers to productivity. Paul and Erica did a great job, marketing this event through using ChatGPT. So generating a lot of content for marketing the event using ChatGPT. And I thought that was such a great thing they did, basically using the tool which we are talking about. So, look at that example as an example of what it can do to your marketing ideas and your marketing brainstorming sessions.
I mean, I'll just share, internally, we've thought about this from both that internal and external audience perspective at PMMI. And so internally, I think is where we got our quickest start, because it began with creating content. How can we use ChatGPT and other AI tools to write articles, blog posts, or most recently, we've been using it to shorten the subject line of our marketing blast emails so that they're less likely to get caught in spam filters. There are lots of different ways that we've used it internally, not to mention things like image generation, which I'll show a couple examples of. But then there's also all of these external user-facing impacts as well. So, we organize one of the large trade shows that are in the country, Pack Expo, if you've heard of it. And there's a lot of different ways that we can use AI, and we're already using it to write things like, tell me why a first-time attendee should come to Pack Expo, or how should they navigate the show as a first-time attendee. There are a lot of different ways where it might take someone an hour and a half to come up with content that's relevant and tailored to your event, whereas AI can do 80% of the heavy lifting, and it can do it in a few minutes. And then you can take that from there and do the rest of the tailoring and get it to the 100% mark, but in a fraction of the time. And just to give a couple examples of how we've segmented that audience.
Perfect. Andy, I'm going to jump into the AI tools demo, pass the baton to you to go over some of the demo examples you might have for the group. But essentially, you can, the usage is so vast, but we'll try to cover as much as possible in the session.
Let me know if everyone can see my screen. I don't know, it muted me. Yes. I think everyone can see my screen now. So this is, if you haven't seen it, and I know some of you have it based on the survey, this is what ChatGPT looks like. And you can see it's pretty simple, send a message and get a response type of interface. By itself, it's pretty simple and easy to use if you're just trying to dabble in it for the first time. So I put some of these examples together before our demo today, just to show you what the possibilities are. And one of the things that I love about AI is the ideation aspect, just using it to even come up with ideas for content, right? If you're thinking about different challenges at your trade show, for example, like ours, it'd say, write me a manual for exhibitors at a packaging trade show. And you can see, this is very simple, right? And you can even respond to it and interact with it and prompt it is what it's called to get a more precise response back from it. But you can see, what are the top 5 things that it calls out there that an exhibitor should be thinking about when they're exhibiting at a show like ours. If you've thought of maybe 3 or 4 of these, AI can give you the 5th idea, the one you haven't thought of. And that's what I think is so exciting about this, is that you can use it to brainstorm, instead of having to have a meeting to talk about these things with like-minded individuals, which is in itself always, of course, a good thing. This is the type of thing that can help you ideate, again, in seconds, as opposed to, minutes or hours. You can ask it so many different things. So one of the examples that I could think of, I know this is an issue for many event organizers, is how can you reduce your internet expense at a large trade show venue? For us, that's a big challenge at a place like McCormick Place. And some of the suggestions, I think, are pretty good, actually. I don't think the venues would like using mobile hotspots. They probably would take issue with that. But, I think it's pretty interesting to say, look for, any of the, free Wi-Fi, or use data saving techniques if you're using your phone hotspot. Plan ahead for what you need so that you don't have to do a last minute order that's more expensive. Again, using this to answer some of these common questions, I thought was really interesting. For us as a show organizer, we're constantly dealing with the question of, should we change systems, or what system is best? ChatGPT, you can ask it questions in plain English form, like what's the best exhibitor management platform? And it will give you a summary of some of the top options that are out there. The thing to keep in mind is it may not give you every option, and it may not give you 100% of the context behind, some of this analysis, right? But it's going to give you enough to go on to ask some more pointed questions, or to do some more precise research to get to the answer that you're looking for. But you can see, you can interact with it, right? So not only did I ask it for its list of top 5, I know that we personally have looked at Map Your Show and A to Z as exhibitor management platforms. So asking it, how do these two platforms compare? And it gives you the 5 most salient points of how these two systems compare and contrast against each other. And it gives you a really nice, like if you had to come up with a slide for someone that compared these two things, you could take this, review it and tweak it, and put it on a slide in mere minutes. And that's where I think the power of this really is. It's just so interesting. On one of the sessions that I did for IAE, we actually came up with this question on the fly. Someone in the audience asked us, how can show organizers increase engagement on the trade show floor, right? And ChatGPT came up with this answer on the fly, and I just thought it was fantastic. Using different tools and techniques to be able to engage attendees, right? Just using this to brainstorm. I just think it's so powerful. And it's the kind of thing where you can sign up for free. You can poke whatever, questions you want at it and see what it comes up with, and then further tweak and tailor what, you put into it to get the better output out of it. I just think it's fascinating. So I mentioned we at PMMI have used it a couple different ways. We're using it to brainstorm. We're using it to generate content. So I used it to help me write a cybersecurity blog that I publish to our members once a month. And so I asked it, tell me why manufacturers should be concerned about a particular type of cyber attack and what they can do to prevent it. And you can see it's written 80 to 85% of the article for me. Obviously I didn't copy and paste it verbatim. I read through it and I had to, maybe tweak a couple things. I even went back to it and said, give me an example where, law enforcement had to approach the company, and it's giving me the example, right? I have to fact check it. Of course, I'm going to use names. In this case, I didn't. But, it's pretty interesting that it can give you so much content, and something that used to take me an hour a month to write takes me about 5 or 10 minutes now, which is just fascinating. The other way that we have used AI tools, so ChatGPT, I think, is one of them. I wanted to show you this from Midjourney, which I think is extremely cool. So one of my team members used this tool called Midjourney, and it's an AI tool that's used specifically for image generation. And I really like how you interact with the tool, because what you can do is you can give it a prompt in plain English, and it will give you a choice of 4 images and let you choose which one best met what you were asking for. So obviously we work in packaging machinery. Our prompt was, show me systems that relate to handling products that are empty or filled in containers on a conveyor line, right? And you can see the options look pretty good, right? I mean, it's very impressive, the results that it came up with. This is the type of thing that you could see when you come to a PAC Expo trade show. Same thing here. We have this thing called high pressure processing, which is how you create things like those cold pressed juice bottles. These are what these machines look like. And it's pretty fascinating that you can put in. So what Jessica did was she took a description of a machine that our member wrote for our member directory. So that's our public website, and put it into Midjourney. And it came up with these images of high pressure processing machines, which again, I think that they're fantastic. If you're looking to write a newsletter or come up with something where you need a visual aid to go with it, this is a free tool that's doing this, which I just think it's incredible. We did the same thing for what we call a vertical form fill seal machine. So that's when you get a packet of granola that's sealed at the top that you have to open. This is the type of machinery that will do it. And she just took this description from one of our members that makes a machine like this, put it in, and got these back. Here's one that I think you'll like even better. So she wrote, show me the Las Vegas Convention Center with machinery in the booths and lots of people walking around. That's all she wrote. And this is what it came up with. You almost can't discern that it's not the Las Vegas Convention Center with a picture from one of our trade shows. It's just phenomenal, the kinds of results that you come up with. So I just think that it's fascinating and it's well worth some time experimenting with. And you know, if like Kapil showed in the slide with the landscape of different tools that are out there, Midjourney is only one of them. There are dozens of these tools that are out there that will do this for you. The last thing I will show you is this graphic, which is our OEM magazine is an actual publication that we make for our members. It's original equipment manufacturers. This image is actually an AI-driven image. So we use the tool, like someone came up with the idea that we were going to highlight the strength of women in manufacturing, because obviously that's a major theme that we're promoting in our industry. We put a prompt into an AI tool and got this image back and loved it, right? You know, it's kind of that World War II-esque, you know, powerful, you know, kind of image. And we took it and we incorporated our PMMI shield. That's our logo there, which you can see. So we put some finishing touches on it that made it ours, right? And we put, of course, our text into it. But AI did the heavy lifting. AI came up with the concept, did 80% of the work, and then we took it and made it our own. And again, I'm just fascinated by how much time savings and how much productivity there is with some of these things. So with that, Kapil, I think you want to show Bard and maybe a couple of other tools that you've been playing with just to kind of see how that gets approached from some other platforms. So I'm going to pass the baton back over to you.
Thanks, Andy. These are great examples, right? So great examples of the image generator. Andy, can you talk a little bit about ChatGPT, the sign-up process, the paid versus free, and same for Midjourney?
Oh, absolutely. That's a great point. So ChatGPT itself is free. So actually, if you go to, in fact, I could even show you if I'll go ahead and share my screen one more time. If I open a new browser and I go to chat.openai.com, you can just hit that sign up button with your email address and sign up for free. And you can use ChatGPT from the get-go. There are some limitations. So obviously you can enter any prompt that you want. You can enter it as many times as you want. But what generally happens if you're on the free tier is that if lots of people are on this all at the same time, it's going to tell you you have to wait until an available slot opens for you to ask your next question. So it is going to somewhat limit you depending on how many people are on it at any given time. There is a paid tier for ChatGPT, which is $20 a month. Put in your credit card and it's basically unlimited. It will not limit how many queries you can do or how frequently you can use it. It also gives you some better controls over the sharing of the prompts that you put into it and the information that you put into it. Because keep in mind, these AI models, they are constantly learning and evolving based on what all of us are asking it to form better outputs. And so whatever you put into it could show up in someone else's output. We'll talk a little bit more about some of those implications later, but what ChatGPT Plus does with the paid subscription is it gives you more control over what's shared and what isn't, which is one reason why I might recommending it. I don't think $20 a month is too expensive. OpenAI has announced a for business type of plan. It has not come out yet. It's one that I know is highly anticipated because for $20 a month, I can upgrade my seat. But as an IT guy, what I want to do is I want to buy 20 seats and give them out to my different departments and let all my users out in the business run with it under one plan that we manage as a company and where I control all the security and privacy controls, et cetera. So that's kind of the basics. And same with Midjourney. Midjourney has a free tier. I think it will let you do some experimentation. And then I think it reaches a point where in order to do more, you would need to upgrade to a paid subscription. That's how a lot of these tools are. They'll let you try them for free so that you can experiment with them. Some of them will even let you do free paid trials, like for a short period of time. Like we tried, I think it was copy.ai gave us like a month-long trial where we could use the paid side of the service at no cost and then decide if we wanted to actually spend the money. And so we've done a couple of those with some of the more marketing-esque tools.
Thanks, Andy. That's awesome. I'm gonna bring something else up on this thing. So Andy is a great ChatGPT user. I feel like I'm a great Bard user. I don't know why, but for me, it's just a continuation of the Google product set, right? So don't need a new account. Everybody has a Gmail account at this point. And Bard is, Google's version of generative AI. So I queued up some questions just for this presentation. First of all, I said I'm a marketing manager. You need to send an email to first-time attendees for InfoComm 2023. Just so you know, InfoComm 2023 was 2 weeks ago, but it's still giving me an answer to send 2023 emails. So came up with a pretty fast response, right? And again, as Andy said, these are not copy and paste. Always, these are for me, these are like getting me away from the blank page syndrome, right? So it's getting me a head start. I can make some edits and go from there. What I love about these tools, both ChatGPT and Bard, is there is continuation, right? So I can say, hey, make it less formal. So it comes out with another version of that email, which is less formal. And then I can go, hey, make it shorter, right? So I don't have to repeat the whole question again. I just have to like continue that conversation with that AI. And you can see it made shorter. The other thing to note about Bard, and I'm not sure, Andy, if ChatGPT does this, is Bard will give you versions or drafts of the same thing, right? So I don't like this draft, I can look at the other draft, I can look at the third draft, and select which one works for me or which one is better for the response I'm trying to get to or the goal I'm trying to reach.
Yeah, that's a really good point because it won't give you options and say draft 1, 2, 3. I actually rather like that about Bard. I think that's a great feature that you have options. But what ChatGPT will do is if you saw that there at the bottom, there was a regenerate response button. And I've used that a few times where if you don't like the first output that it gave you or think you could do it better, you can hit regenerate. Or what I do, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, you can actually refine and change your prompt, what you put into the chatbot to get a more refined output. I can actually show you an example of that.
Yeah, I think that's the edit text on the Google side. So
yes.
Here's another one. I think this is topical for us internally. So it says, I'm trying to be an AV engineer. We represent the AV industry. What events should I attend? It just gives me a generic answer for attend some trade shows, attend some training courses, meetups and user groups, volunteer opportunities. Then I go, hey, which trade shows, right? So tell me which trade shows should I attend? Glad to see InfoComm is the first one there. And this is probably, getting back to how good your SEO is. But, if people move away from search into, asking, the generative AI bots to answer for us, then it's really important to keep an eye out on this, right? That we want to be in that answer for a very specific question or very specific audience. In this example, it lists me a lot of things, a lot of events. But then which certifications do you recommend? And then it'll come out with certifications I should be looking at if I want to be an AV engineer. So again, something you should look at from your organization perspective, but has great personal use as well. The third is a personal example, right? So I'm thinking, hey, I should take a trip to South America in December. I have a 5-year-old. What's the recommendation here? And then it'll give me, examples of what a South America trip should, could be like. I like these answers, but I'm not sure. I pick the first one and I go, give me a good itinerary for the Amazon rainforest. Again, it gives me a 3-day itinerary. And I'm like, 3 days is too less for me and my family. How about make it 10 days? And then 10 days from Washington, D.C. So it'll spit out an itinerary of 10 days from Washington, D.C., from day 1 to day 10. So play around with it, and then how much would it cost? It gives me a ballpark figure of this is what you should expect to pay, and really answers a lot of my questions, which I would get from from a Google search and going down pathways to a very focused answer here. So I love this example as a personal example, but you could use it for, for work as well. This is just a general example. A lot of my friends are talking about the electric car revolution. I have no idea what this is. So, hey, summarize the electric car revolution for me. I don't want to read 10 articles. So here's an example of how it summarized something for me. And we'll come back to this in an internal example as well. In terms of like, we live in a world of documents. How can those documents be summarized so that I don't have to read 10 different documents? The AI will help me get up to speed. Andy just came back from vacation last week. So, that would be very useful to catch up, for example, on a Monday morning.
Only I could plug it into my email. Not quite yet, but maybe soon.
And this is another professional example. I say I'm a CIO for a large trade organization. Write me a job description for a director of IT. It again gets me over the blank page syndrome. So it gives me a pretty standard response, which gets me somewhere, and then I can make edits to it. And then we're big on Salesforce, so add Salesforce skills to this. Again, a continuation of that conversation, and then you can see it added some Salesforce skills to the job description. So again, gets me further ahead than I would get on a blank page, for example. The other thing I think both ChatGPT and Bard have is like you can delete some of this activity, right? Like you don't want to keep this activity there. You should be very conscious of the questions you're asking, because the AI is learning from the questions you're asking, the context you're giving it. So again, a good example of, I want to delete this history so it doesn't live there forever. Erica and Paul, I'm not looking at the chat, but if there are questions, please, let Andy or I know, and we'll be happy to answer them as well.
Yeah, I think that Andy's been answering most of them, and so is Paul. So, but if everybody feel free to add more questions. I think everybody's like absorbing all of these tools.
Thank you. Yeah, there's a lot. So, obviously we can keep the conversation going later as well. Andy and I are both open to connections and, making sure we can answer more questions going forward. Andy showed great examples from Midjourney, right? I don't play a lot in Midjourney. What I've started doing is playing a little bit in Adobe Firefly. Adobe Firefly is Adobe's version of, image AI. Again, it's a free tool right now. It's only available on a browser. The good thing is we all use Adobe in our day-to-day lives, be it Photoshop. What Firefly does is, takes that vector image, puts it in Photoshop, so we can go from there. So again, it's a continuation of work and kind of feels like it's built into something we already use. There are other examples of DALL-E, which is an OpenAI text-to-image AI tool, as well as Stable Diffusion, which is an open source one, if you're looking for some open source options. I just took very basic examples. This literally took me 5 minutes of my life. I took an image of a coworker of mine. We clicked at Infocom. He completed 25 years. I don't like the people in the background. Again, this is not new, right? A lot of phones do it, but what it's doing here is it can do more than that, right? So it can also what they call generate and fill the background, which I'll show an example of as well. So here's Hector completing his 25 years and, kind of like being the sole, image on that picture. This is me. This is, good looking me at Infocom. Again, I don't like a lot of people in the background, so I kind of cleaned it up for my profile. But what it can do is, this brings up a good point, is it can also be used for like something which you don't intend it to be, right? So here's a coworker of mine pretending I wasn't at Infocom, I was at a bar. Again, did a pretty good job for the 5 minutes I spent on this picture, or all these pictures combined. So you have to be mindful of these tools because they can be, used for something you didn't intend it to be used for.
Which tools specifically did you use to do that cleanup, Kapil? Because I'm just fascinated by how the differences are.
This is straight Adobe Firefly. Again, it's free. It's available online. You can just go and play with it. Adobe Firefly is doing a lot of things like it's adding letters and words to pictures, which some of these tools cannot do. But Adobe Firefly is also respecting a lot of the Creative Commons licensing. So if you've heard news about Midjourney got into a little bit of trouble with copyright images. Andy showed kind of an example of that, where it took like a machine and like, had branding on it, which we probably don't want to use. But Adobe Firefly is taking a different approach in terms of open licenses. It's also adding some DRM to it, so it knows that this is an AI generated image and not a image, generated from a camera directly. Let's get to some internal tools to prepare for this. This I love, right? Because we are prepping a lot internally for these, right? So there's, if you've heard anything about Microsoft is, an AI, open AI partner, open AI user, and OpenAI now, runs on Azure as well. So if you're on an Azure cloud environment, there is access to OpenAI APIs. But what's coming is Microsoft Copilot, right? So it's if you're a Teams user, a SharePoint user, a Microsoft Office user, or a Windows user, Microsoft Copilot is their version of AI built into these products, which will be very useful, right? So again, I have to read 10 documents. Copilot can summarize those 10 documents. I missed 3 meetings. Copilot can summarize those meetings. So I can be well prepared. I can be, I can get the answers I want. So it's kind of getting built into our workplace app search. But what I want to point out here is Copilot is coming. You should be prepared for Copilot, right? Because we're throwing a lot of internal data, for example, on Copilot. You want to make sure the access rights to files are correctly, assigned. So people in the org aren't looking at salary information, for example. So it's working on that access control. So the prep on our side has been our access control on files is very clean, very clear, so that no wrong data is being shared between internal staff. Andy told me about Box.com AI. Again, this is AI. If you're a Box.com user, you have a whole bunch of documents there. Box.com AI will help you summarize, help you keyword those documents. So your access to information is easier, and just again, an efficiency perspective makes it better for you. We are very excited. We are big Salesforce users. So there's Salesforce Einstein GPT, which will make a lot of the Salesforce things easier for us, right from people in the sales organization right down to IT. So we are really looking forward to this. But get yourself prepped, start learning about what information is out there from these companies already. And then AWS, if you're an AWS cloud user, has a host of AI services, which helps you build tools internally. One of them is called TextRact. Again, same kind of concept, will keyword all your or metadata all your documents, and make you efficient and your staff efficient in terms of document and note search. I'm going to let Andy speak a little bit about this because he's an expert and telling me how to prompt AI better. But here's just some tips to remember, right? So the more context you give the AI tool, the better the answer would be. So in my example, if I just said, hey, give me a job description for a director of IT, it wouldn't be that contextual. If I add context, hey, I'm a CIO at a trade organization, I'm looking for a Salesforce director of IT with Salesforce skills, it'll just give me a better answer, right? So prompting is really important. I've also put down some tools just for you to reference later. Learningprompting.org is a great website. Has pretty much takes you through how to learn to prompt better. Again, this is a really useful skill to have, as well as there's a cloud skill boost from Google, which is again a host of courses on generative AI, how to use it, how to get better at it. So look at these tools, look at getting yourself informed if you want to learn more about how to get better at using some of these tools. Andy, you want to chime in?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a framework that I found on LinkedIn that I've been very fond of the last couple months as we've been diving into this. It's called the role task format, and it's a really nice, concise way of remembering what the best ways are to prompt AI to get a more precise response back from it. And so the whole concept behind it is start with role, right? So role meaning indicate the role that you want AI to adapt when it's responding to you. And to me, when I first found out about this kind of took my use of AI to a whole new level. So instead of saying, as you said, Kapil, write me a job description for a director of IT, you could say something like, write me job descriptions, maybe not as good of an example. Let me think about this. The different roles are like critic, expert, inventor, marketer. So I've used it when I'm writing my cybersecurity blog to say, instead of tell me why I should be concerned about this particular cyber threat, tell me as a manufacturer why I should be concerned. And it changes the nature of the response. It's tailoring it almost to the audience. And so when you put in a role, you could even say to it, adopt the role of website designer and tell me why, blah, 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 blah. And it's going to change the nature of the response based on the prompt that you put in. And again, this is what I really appreciate about it, is that it takes what's probably a more generic response and makes it that much more precise the more you put into it. So when you're putting in a prompt, think about the role to start with. Then secondly, task, right? So it's role task format. So the task is talking about the task or the format that you want it to produce an output for. Do you want it to produce a paragraph, an email, a memo, a step-by-step guide, an article, or is it like a product description? All these things could take on different formats. And so if you can be more specific in your prompt about who it is that you want it to be addressing and how you want to be addressing them, it helps you get that more precise output back. And then lastly, the format. You can actually specify what format you want it to come out with. Do you want it to be in bullet points? Do you want it to be in a checklist form? Do you want it to be in a table? Or do you want it to be in code or images? You can actually prompt ChatGPT and specify, because ChatGPT tends to respond with, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and maybe an intro paragraph and a conclusion paragraph. But if you want it to write it more in a blog post, you can do that. In fact, there's been a couple of use cases where people have picked up and said, let's say a famous author, right? Write me an article that's in the writing style of Geoffrey Chaucer, let's say, right? And it will take, based on its knowledge of books that the author has written, and tailor what it's creating for you in the format of the author, which is pretty fascinating. There's a couple of really funny examples out there where folks have done that. So these are things to think about when you're prompting these AI tools. If you write better prompts, you'll get better outputs. And there's a whole field of science that's just, up and coming right now called prompt engineering. And so learningprompting.org is probably a great place to start if you're someone who, or if you know someone who's going to be doing a lot of writing prompts to get output from AI tools.
Thanks, Andy. That's really helpful. Yeah. And the last thing I just want to point out too is test, right? Don't trust what the answer is. Make sure you read it. Make sure you're okay with it. Again, taking it for its word, it's not good when you're looking for very specific information, because just like human responses, it can give you a wrong response as well, or an incorrect response, I should say. This is just an example internally from my side, from the Avixa side. My team's obviously loves building tools. What we've started doing again for our organization is, this is an example of, on the left, you see an Avixa Einstein bot, which is a chat bot we use currently. And again, it has very guided paths. So you can see like how it cannot answer, what courses, I've enrolled in, because we've not trained the chat bot to, go down a guided path for that question. While the example here, which we're using ChatGPT 3.5 API tools for, and you can see the responses it's doing. So we have to train the chatbot less, because we can give it, information from our website and say, hey, pick it up from here. What we found in this is it'll also answer questions we don't want it to answer. So in this example, we're trying to make sure it answers only Avixa questions or Avixa related questions. so we don't get liable for like something we don't want it to answer out there in the world, for example, right? So, but again, think about from your organization perspective, if there are usages of these tools for building a chatbot for your organization or for your show.
And I love that example too, Kapil, because we are evaluating the exact same thing at PMMI. So we've had chatbots on our websites, and they're very good at answering things like, what are the hours on the show floor? And, what hall can I find, this exhibitor, pre-programmed kind of responses. But the example on the right, where it would involve building something that interfaces with a large language model, that's something we're looking at right now, because in our industry, there's a big language disparity between people that make products. If you're, an entrepreneur on Shark Tank and you've come up with the greatest health snack ever, and machinery manufacturers that person would need to go to figure out what type of machine they would need to make that product at scale. And so the idea that I have is, if you can interface with a large language model and create a chatbot that you can interact with, that prompts them and asks them specific questions about what they're making to help drive them to one of our members' types of machines, that's a pretty amazing thing to do. And it could all be done without the interaction of a human, which has been one of our big challenges. Is, you need a person with packaging industry knowledge to answer these types of questions in the world of yesterday. But in the world of tomorrow, it's really possible that AI could do this for you and could possibly even do it better. So really, really exciting things to come.
Thank you. So just leaving you with some summaries, I had more thoughts. So, what is the application within your org? What is the application for internal? What is the application for external? Think of those things. We didn't even cover data privacy, security, and legal issues. Obviously, if you build something, or, the AI model is learning from the questions being asked, right? So how do we train our own people to ask the right questions and not overshare internal data with some of these applications, some of these tools? Again, something to think about. There's obviously questions on copyright and, what can be used, what cannot be used, which, everybody from the government down to big organizations are trying to grapple with. So again, something to think about. Again, have a plan for internal proprietary data, right? So if Copilot is coming, for example, a big Office 365 shop, how do you address, what Copilot learns from your documents, from our documents? Misinformation and bad actors. Again, I spoke of that from the image side, right? That was a funny example, but could be used for something bad. From a trade show perspective, right? Somebody creating an image which we don't want out there on social media. How do we protect against that? How do we keep our eyes and ears open for that kind of stuff? And then limitations and finding the right partners, right? We saw the landscape is so big, that landscape is constantly changing. So look for, what are our existing vendors doing? If there are new vendors coming in, ask the right questions on, large language model, generative AI. Are they playing in that field? Are they thinking of that on their roadmaps? So something to think about when you're looking at new vendors, new partners as well. I just love this example because this is an example of what we talked about about how do we keep our data protected and how do we train our staff. So this is news from actually yesterday, reported by Axios, that Congress sets limits on staff ChatGPT use. I'll just bring this up a little bit further along. So, it came up with some rules for ChatGPT use, right? It didn't say don't use ChatGPT, but it said please use ChatGPT plus, right? So because it's more protected, there is some, it's not publicly available, so you're not sharing that. So unlike the free service, the subscription version incorporates better privacy features, which are better to protect data. And then it limited the use of large language model to just ChatGPT for now. So it said no other versions of chat tools but ChatGPT should be used. Officers are out to research and evaluation purposes only. Don't use it into your regular workflow, for example. So not everything should go through, a large language model, for example. I love the last one, which is, officers should input non-sensitive data. I don't think it defined non-sensitive data in the article itself. But again, like, it's training people to say, don't paste any sensitive information into these bots. Make sure you're using publicly available information or information which can be publicly available, and kind of like use those as question sets even. And then enable privacy settings, right? So like, we looked at the bot example where you can delete activity, you can delete history. So, make sure you know where those settings are, make sure you are enabling those settings, and, making sure the data is protected as much as we can. So again, this brought to me that we probably need to write our own internal policy documents for our staff to use, because obviously a lot of people are using this in their day-to-day life, and I want them to use it, but probably set some context on how to use it. Again, really running to the end of the conversation, but connect with Andy and I on LinkedIn. We would love to have this conversation going forward. Love to probably do a follow-up session if this was really confusing. We covered a lot today, and make sure you absorb that after the session as well. Here's a plug for some membership benefits and resources for IAE. If you're not a member, look at IAE membership and the benefits around it. You can join a chapter just like the Southwest chapter, for example. And then there's a host of webinars, online content, call out to social media and the Expo event from IAE as well. And then if you are connected with IAE, but you have IT team members who are not connected with IAE, I would love to, enrich our rosters with more people. Andy and I are always looking to talk technology with more people within the event space. So reach out to Lisa, get your rosters updated with, people on the IT side or who would identify as IT within your orgs. And again, a plug for Expo. There's an event technology track in Expo in December. And then member link is the IAE community where we can continue some of this conversation as well.
Wow, I saw some of the text messages in the chat saying our heads are already like on the ceiling with all of this information and absorbing how that can be applied in our lives daily. I don't know about all you, but I've been generating tons of, oh, I could do this and I could do that, and which I have not before. I would like to, I know it's at the top of the hour, if you all have time, and Andy and Cubicle have time, if there's any questions that could be asked, I'd like to open it up. Do you have availability, Cubicle and Andy?
Certainly, we can hang around for a few minutes. I know I can.
So I know that some people have been asking in the chat. I think everybody's just been absorbing all this information, but is there anyone out there that would like to jump in with a question? I know I have a few. I'm opening it up now. I can't.
I'll just wrap it up with, this is making a huge societal change right now, right? So we're hearing about this in our news, we're hearing about it in our day-to-day lives. I just want to take the takeaway to be that, there is a lot of unforeseen opportunity here. How you use some of these tools is very independent of how Andy and I would use a tool like this. So, like I want to make sure you're comfortable doing that, start exploring it, start asking the right questions. And then, we don't know the opportunity here in some respects, right? So don't be afraid of, playing around with it. Some of these tools are free or have free versions. So go out there, play with them, ask the right questions. There's a lot of information out there as well from thought leaders in this space. So just make sure you can use these going forward and not be afraid of these.
Yeah, and like you said, it's ever changing. What was something that you didn't know about a week ago, you now know this week. I think, and Paul even said he saw this presentation at the Matzo meets that you all did, and from then till now, it has changed. So thanks for that comment, Paul. I just have a really quick question, a couple quick questions that popped in my head. One is, how Google has always been kind of an AI. If you think about it, nobody really thinks that Google AI has been out there, and Google has been kind of our AI tool, go-to tool. But with that said, the tracking of what I do on Google. If I ask it a question, it ghosts me with stuff that is not maybe unbiased. It's more biased as to, what my history has been. And sometimes I want an answer to a question that is, like you said, you drill down into what you feed it, the more information you feed in a question, the better. So I'm wondering, are some of the generative AI tools now, like ChatGPT and Bard, when you ask it a question, is it going to give you a more unbiased opinion than if you ask the same question, let's say Google?
I did hear something about this, right, Erica? This is a complicated question. Obviously, Bard is still in beta. It's an experiment, as they call it. So there is no paid version of Bard. They're not taking advertising on it yet. But there was a blog I read how it's recommending, like, what TV should I buy, how it's ranking those TVs. So again, don't trust the answer as is, right? Because it's obviously doing a lot of search engine optimization. It's obviously reading a lot from different articles. So don't blindly follow what the first answer is the best way to put it right now. So again, test in terms of this is, make sure you're looking at different perspectives. That TV example is great because, like, is Bard then channeling like which TV is going to be most sold in the world versus, somebody who's can be trustworthy, blogger you follow, or Amazon in this example, or reviews you follow. So this is an example of just like, don't blindly trust it. But we are learning as we go because it's scraping a lot of this data from the web.
And Kapil, I'd liken it to the example we chatted about this morning with the encyclopedias. In the world, 20 or so years ago, when there were, you had to go do your research in a library with a written encyclopedia, there were multiple encyclopedias for a reason, because there are multiple perspectives on any one thing. And so I think AI is really no different. It's one of the reasons why some of these tools that use more than one model to incorporate their response to you probably carry greater value than ones that just rely on one model, because it blends those different perspectives. And that may be in the future the way you get a less biased example. But is there a way to get a totally unbiased answer? I think the challenge goes back to the prompter to do your homework and try different prompts, different models, and see where you get.
Awesome. And then the other thing that popped in my head is the Outlook and the Salesforce generative AI that's going to be applied, especially Salesforce. That privacy of my collection of clients, I wouldn't want to be out there in the world, right? So there has to be some sort of privacy tools with that.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Erica, because ChatGPT, the free version, has very few controls over what gets shared with the model and used to train, and then could be further shared with others as part of its responses. Many of the paid tools have defined privacy policies about how information is used that you put into it, and how that information is further shared or sub-processed, et cetera. And so, obviously do your homework, right? If you're looking at some of these tools and you're going to pay for one, make sure you look on their website and read their statements on privacy and security and whatnot. I just did this we were looking at a tool called fireflies.ai as a meeting note taker that would plug right into Zoom just like this and transcribe the entire meeting and everybody that said, anything. And if we were going to use that for our board meetings, which is something we're considering, obviously we needed to make sure that their privacy controls prevented the sharing of any sort of confidential information, that it was encrypted, et cetera. And so, you have to definitely do your reading.
Yeah, it's scary, especially if it's connected to a system out there like Salesforce or Outlook that you already have information in, and now they're applying a generative AI tool to it. So.
Absolutely. I had read an article, or no, maybe it was, I was on a webinar from ASAE. They talked about the legal implications of AI, which I thought was very interesting. One of the examples they shared was that an engineer at Samsung put in a code snippet into one of the AI tools, and he wanted to either improve it or make it do something or make it better. And sure enough, that code snippet made it somewhere else in the world and someone else's response from AI. And it ended up being a major breach of confidential information for them. So, you know, these things do happen. There are implications like this that we hadn't really thought of, that you're going to want to think about before you unleash your entire organization to use the free version of ChatGPT, right?
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I could go on and on and on with this conversation and ask you a ton more questions. I don't see any questions in the chat. If you have any final thoughts, thank you so much for staying a little late. I know we started a little late due to my lack of all of a sudden Zoom knowledge, but thank you so much. And thanks Southwest Chapter of IAE. Thank you, Cubicle and Andy, for your time. And any final thoughts, please let me know. Let us know.